All right, everyone. Restoring the United States to some semblance of order, both domestically and in foreign policy ways, is going to be a gargantuan task. For the average politician, even if they were well-meaning, I would expect that they would get a relatively limited amount accomplished, especially early on. You know, you have that honeymoon period usually for incoming presidents, though prediction, I don't think Trump's going to get much of a honeymoon. And that's because technically he's already been president of the United States. He'll get that boost. It'll recede down to a longer-term mean. Although I would note, during most of his presidency, he was wildly more popular than Joe Biden was at some of his better moments. So he'll get that little boost, and hopefully in that first 100 days or the first 90 days, something like that, he focuses on a few, number one, easy things to do. So things that take very little effort, very little time or planning. Number one, and then set the groundwork for a protracted campaign of reform. There are some things he can do right away. For example, one of the first things that he should do is free Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road founder. He is basically facing the rest of his life in prison for literally nothing, for owning a website. So I think that should be number one. Some people are floating pardoning Assange. I would like that to happen. Do I expect it? Not necessarily. I think you might see a pulling back of the U.S. government's efforts to extradite and things like that. We'll see what happens. Also, Snowden. The problem is the legacy media has poisoned the public's mind into believing that Snowden is a Russian agent. So, I mean, he couldn't do it in his first term. In his second term now, he can't run for re-election again, so that might be on the table. We can put pressure on Trump, but we'll wait and see. Another thing, immediate executive action to open up drilling, to remove us from the Paris Climate Accords, to get back to work, getting oil, getting gas, make ourselves energy independent and a net exporter again like we were under Donald Trump for a couple of years. This would boost the economy and have wide-reaching implications for GDP as well. You lower the cost of fuel, you're lowering the cost of other things as well. Some people are talking about mass deportation. This would require a considerable amount of planning and probably a preemptive legal assault on sanctuary states and cities. Otherwise, it's not going to work very well. What Trump could end up doing is wading into a situation where he can't win, where he can't deliver enough for the people that support it, while also antagonizing the people that oppose it. So it needs to be very well planned. That cannot be accomplished in 100 days. You can set the groundwork. You can get people together and say, okay, logistically speaking, we need to set things up before we move. So he needs to get the best and brightest on that. Another thing, he should immediately convene a group of people, including Elon Musk. He must be aboard with such an effort. Ramaswamy would be a good choice as well, along with a laundry list of others. Get them together and try to figure out ways to reform Section 230. Now, my proposal for that effectively Trump echoed, which is, you know, you can be a platform or you can be a publisher. You basically choose your poison. If you're a publisher, you can editorialize all you want, but you're responsible for anything posted on your site. If you're a platform, then there are limited availabilities for you to actually police content unless it's flat out illegal or it's non-speech. So botting, spam, things like that. That sounds perfectly acceptable. Properly framed for the American people, I can't imagine they wouldn't generally support that. It could get bipartisan support as well. That's important. You know, think about all the people that do gig work and shit like that. Their social media accounts, all the apps they use, everything electronic and human communication is completely important to them to continue their work. And there's actually a little bit of an overlap with a different issue that he should tackle right away. Reassure the American people you're not going to go after their gig work and do what the Biden administration wanted to do and try to force people like me to unionize simply because we make money on the internet or something like that with self-employment. I suspect that he will move fairly quickly to extend his tax cuts and probably to increase them. We've got the child tax credit expansion that was originally promoted by Vance, and Trump has, it appears, taken that up. That can be done fairly quickly. If you've got the House and the Senate, I can't imagine the average Republican, like on some issues you'll get a few cuck Republicans, like if they tried to reduce gun control, like people like Cornyn would be against it. But taxes are not very popular among the Republican voting base. Any extension of tax cuts or any increase thereof is going to be popular with most constituencies in the states that those people represent. I have a feeling that Trump will get that passed without too much effort. One thing he's also pivoted to, he's only talked about it a little bit, is again, trying to go after the ACA. I think that's a dead issue at this point. It's one that I don't think should be dead, but it is, presumptively, for the most part. I think there are better things that he can do, at least in the first weeks and months in office. Again, get a few easy victories, especially red meat to the base. Ross Ulbricht, some of these other things. Do that right away. The drill, baby, drill thing, you can do that on day one. And then set up for a longer-term campaign. Also, the 250-year anniversary of the United States, Trump is going to get to reign over that next year. And he's planning like a year-long free-for-all festival, like a traveling show with people from every state invited to set up like pavilions and statues and showcase technology and tourist wares and stuff like that. That's going to be, I'm probably going to go to Iowa when that happens, when that opens up. You can find me by the Vermont Pavilion, drinking maple syrup, I suppose, or something like that. Knowing the state of Vermont, though, they'll probably have, like, anal dilators and shit like that in the pavilion, so it'll be a little bit weird. I have a feeling that it's times it'll devolve into politics more than unity, but for what it's worth, I mean, to celebrate it is a good idea. Get a commemorative coin thing going or some shit. So that's some of the suggestions for the first 100 days. Lay the groundwork and make your argument for the tax reform and things that take a little bit longer. But there are a couple of major things you can do pretty much right a fucking way. Everything else will require more elaborate planning, especially knowing, and we do, the unipartists, including some of the GOP, do not like Donald Trump. They want him to leave his second term as president, probably having been impeached a third time for literally nothing. They'll probably try that at some point, once they have the votes in the House at least. And they probably will after the midterms. Let's face it, that would be fairly typical of the incoming party that then controls the White House. Typically, they'll lose the House of Representatives. Everything else requires more planning. For energy, for the tax relief, you should be able to prevail upon the GOP majority fairly easily there. And then do some trolling, you know? Do some more mean tweets, because it'll be amusing. I mean, it serves no further public policy. I would note that almost immediately after Trump's election, Hamas weighed in and said, oh, we're hoping for an end to this war really quickly. And apparently Trump has already told Netanyahu that he wants the fighting to be over before he's inaugurated. I think there's probably a reason for that. And I don't think it's just for the shits and giggles of having not even technically risen into the office for the second time, and all of a sudden a major conflict happens to, get tamped down on. I don't think that it's just for that purpose either. I think it's part of a larger, more pragmatic foreign policy strategy. That's about all. Peace out.